If you become rich and honored, don't forget about me. Philip Liu. When I was 8 years old, my sister Jing jokingly said to me multiple times, "If you become rich and honored someday, don't forget me." This playful remark came after she completed a Chinese class in junior high school. The famous six-word phrase in Chinese, "Go Fugui, Wuxiang Wang," quoted by her, originated from a historical story that took place around 209 BC. In the tale, a group of forced laborers relaxed one day after some hard work, and one laborer said to his companions, "We will be rich and honored in the future, but let's not forget our old friends." The others mocked him, thinking he was merely daydreaming. However, shortly after this conversation, the man and another laborer led hundreds of slaves in an uprising against the tyranny of the first Chinese emperor. They had no other choice but to rebel. Their work schedule was delayed due to persistent rains, leaving them facing either rebellion or death as punishment. This event could be considered the earliest Chinese version of "Give me liberty," or "Give me death." The leader died in battle before achieving the riches and honor he sought, but this first uprising in Chinese history was significant. After his death, his followers continued to fight against oppression, shaking the rule of the first Chinese emperor until they ultimately succeeded in overthrowing the empire. My sister and her classmates used to joke with each other after learning this classic quote. Naturally, she also joked with me at home. Many years have passed since then, and while I haven't become rich or honored, I haven't forgotten the way she humorously spoke those words with me. Her infectious laughter and playful smiles during those moments still linger in my memories. During my childhood, I often tagged along with Jing, who engaged in various activities, one of which involved collecting grass for nearby villagers to feed their livestock. While Jing and her friends focused on gathering practical grass, my attention was drawn to the sweet-tasting roots of another plant, a delightful alternative to scarce candies in our era of food shortages. Whenever Jing discovered these roots, she generously wiped off the soil and placed them in my mouth, a cherished reward for faithfully following her. This sweet indulgence accompanied me for years until Jing entered junior high school, marking a decline in such outdoor adventures. As I grew older, nostalgia for my childhood led me to seek the precise name of this memorable plant. After consulting books and dictionaries, I identified it as Oxalis corymbosa. DC. During college vacations, I even found some in my hometown fields, allowing me to taste the sweetness once again. However, the joy of having Jing place those roots in my mouth remains unmatched, a fond memory that time cannot fully revive. Apart from my usual playful activities near home, Mom never allowed me to accompany Jing on distant excursions due to safety concerns. Until I turned 5, this protective stance remained unchanged. However, a breakthrough occurred that summer when I was granted permission to venture much farther to visit Dad, who, like Mom, was a teacher but worked in a town approximately 6 miles away from our village. This newfound freedom marked the beginning of clearer and more detailed childhood memories. During the hot and prolonged summer, anticipation filled our days as we eagerly awaited Dad's return. Unfortunately, each day ended in disappointment as he failed to come back as scheduled. In an era lacking efficient communication tools, Mom's worry deepened, prompting her to send Jing to find Dad's whereabouts. Although I also desired to go, Mom initially refused. This time, I resisted and insisted on gaining her permission. Feeling like a big boy, I aimed for independence and fair treatment, asserting my right to join the search for Dad. Simultaneously, I had grown tired of confined play within a limited range near home and yearned to explore the outside world. After persistent requests, Mom eventually approved my plea, granting me the opportunity to visit Dad alongside Jing. With Mom's permission, I eagerly led Jing towards our destination. After a mix of walking and running, we reached a significant spot marked by a large tree symbolizing the boundary between neighboring villages, approximately an hour into our journey. Jing, concerned about my stamina, inquired about my fatigue. "Pooh, are you tired?" she asked, aware of my tendency to get exhausted easily. Despite being only 4 years older, Jing had always doted on me since my birth, often carrying me around inside our house. She, too, was not particularly strong physically. "Yes, I'm too tired to walk anymore. Can I ride on your back?" I cheekily sought the familiar comfort of being carried by my sister, knowing she would usually comply with my requests at home. "No, you can't this time. We're still too far from Dad's school. Unlike at home, I can't carry you for long distances. How about we take a rest here?" Jing suggested, balancing my desire for a break with the need to cover more ground on our journey. I responded, a bit disappointed about missing out on a piggyback ride but still content that we could enjoy a short break. Jing and I settled on the smooth, polished stones beneath the ancient tree, a customary resting spot for travelers over generations. While Jing remained composed, I couldn't stay still for long. Intrigued by the surroundings, I leapt up and followed the sound of a chirping bird into the bushes. "A little bird!" I exclaimed, chasing after a baby bird yet to take flight. After a swift pursuit, I successfully caught it, cradling the small creature in my left hand while covering it protectively with my right. The panicked bird cried louder in my palm, prompting me to ensure its ability to breathe by creating a small opening between my hands, a lesson learned from Mom. Eager to share my discovery, I showed Jing my prize. The frightened bird's cries attracted adult birds, perching on nearby branches. One large bird, in particular, responded passionately to the distressed baby bird and made a daring dive into my hands, clearly attempting to rescue its offspring. "See, the mother bird risks her own life to save her baby," Jing explained. "You should release it alive. Otherwise, these big birds might follow us, causing trouble on the rest of our journey." A bit unnerved by the big bird's intense reaction, I continued for a few more steps before heeding Jing's warning and finally releasing the small bird. As we neared the town, our excitement grew, envisioning Dad's joyful surprise at our unexpected visit. However, our expectations were shattered upon arrival. A sizable assembly had gathered on the school's playground, featuring a newly constructed platform with around 15 people, 5 of whom wore wooden plates around their necks bearing various inscriptions. The atmosphere was charged with fanaticism as individuals on the platform passionately shouted furious words, seemingly against the crestfallen 5. Hundreds below enthusiastically responded to the slogans. Dad's name echoed through the air, intertwined with cries of "Down with the capitalist executioner Liu Tianzhu." Jing and I moved closer, realizing one of the struggling figures was our father. At my young age, I couldn't comprehend the situation, but Jing, having completed grade 4 that summer, understood the gravity. She had learned in school that a capitalist executioner was considered a bad element, opposing Chairman Mao as severely as a landlord or counter-revolutionary. Observing Dad's public humiliation, Jing identified one of his colleagues on the platform, a teacher she had met a year earlier during a school visit. Though initially a nice guy, he now fervently denounced Dad. This sudden transformation left Jing perplexed and disturbed. The sight of our father being brutally denounced in public overwhelmed Jing, leading to her fainting, while I burst into tears at the distressing scene. During the Cultural Revolution, individuals deemed politically black fell into 5 categories: landlord, rich peasant, counter-revolutionary, evil, and rightist. Those in these categories often faced detention, criticism, and humiliation during struggle meetings. A new category, capitalist executioner, targeted those who had worked in government-run organizations like schools and hospitals. Dad found himself in this new classification after the assembly, but he was somewhat fortunate to escape detention, possibly due to his recognized contributions to the school's development since the early 1950s. In the aftermath of the unexpected encounter at the struggle meeting, I learned more from discussions between Dad and Jing. As we approached the playground, Dad, standing on the high platform, had noticed us. In an attempt to shield us from witnessing his disgrace, he tried to lower his head, aware of the psychological impact it could have on his children. However, despite his efforts, the loud slogans degradingly shouted his name, revealing the truth. A few weeks later, the hot summer transitioned into cooler autumn weather, and Mom enrolled me in primary school, even though I was only a few months over 5. While the typical starting age was 7, there was no kindergarten available in our rural village. The fall semester began with a tense atmosphere, as some of Mom's colleagues had lost their teaching qualifications due to perceived bad family backgrounds. Rumors circulated that Mom might be demoted to a distant mountain village for thought reform and arduous farming work. To mitigate potential risks for our family, enrolling me in school was seen as a precautionary measure, bringing me under control and providing a semblance of safety amidst the uncertainties of that challenging time. Thus, I embarked on my journey as a pupil. I vividly recall the first class, where we were instructed to write "Long Live Chairman Mao." The complex, multi-stroke Chinese characters posed a challenge, especially for classmates who were just beginning their educational journey. While I struggled with the difficulty of this early lesson, the subsequent years of learning proved relatively trouble-free. The most discomforting experiences were not within the classroom but during school breaks. Rarely did I get to spend time with my parents during summer and winter vacations, as they were constantly engrossed in political studies. This was a common practice for teachers during those years, involving either ideological indoctrination with communist ideals or coercing confessions of personal experiences. A year after starting primary school, my parents attended a summer political study class in a town 15 miles away from our village. Young kids were not permitted, so Mom had to entrust my care to my elder sister, Jing. On the eve of their departure, Mom carefully explained important instructions to Jing and requested a nearby relative to check on us every few days. Quietly, Mom and Dad left home without my awareness. It didn't take long for me to realize Mom's absence, and the yearning for her led me to contemplate retracing the road to the place where they mentioned their summer study was to be held. During the initial days without Mom, Jing dutifully fulfilled her assigned responsibilities. She vigilantly watched over me, thwarting my attempts to head to the road, as I yearned to reconnect with Mom, unaware of her quiet departure. "Pooh, if you try to escape again and get lost on the road, a tiger might tear you into pieces and swallow you up in no time," Jing warned, weary of my repeated attempts to run away. "I just miss Mom," I cried, and she used to tell me stories. "All right, if you promise not to run away anymore, I'll tell you a story every day, just like Mom did before," Jing proposed. "Really? If you tell me a good story every day, I promise I won't try to run away anymore," I eagerly agreed, thrilled at the prospect of daily storytelling with my sister. "Deal." Jing began recounting stories she had learned from her teachers in school before the summer vacation. Since starting primary school, she had developed the habit of sharing classroom tales and interesting facts with Mom. It became a family pastime, with Mom patiently listening to Jing's narratives and using her teaching expertise to enhance her storytelling skills. After years of practice and improvement under Mom's guidance, Jing became a captivating storyteller by the time she entered her senior year of primary school. I cherished her stories as much as those from Mom, and now Jing was sharing a favorite tale she had recently learned in school. Once upon a time, a family of 4 deer found themselves chased by several hunters. Despite their best efforts to escape, the hunters relentlessly pursued them, driving them toward a dead end, a cliff hundreds of meters high in the mountainous region. The valley's width made it impossible for the deer to leap across to the opposite mountain. Sensing the imminent danger, the deer hesitated briefly but chose not to turn back and face the hunters' guns. Instead, they continued running at full speed toward the high cliff without slowing down. What happened next? Were the deer family killed by the hunters, or did they plunge off the cliff? I asked anxiously, feeling concerned about the grave danger the deer family faced. In a brief moment, the 4 deer reached the cliff. Now, they had only 2 choices: take the risk of jumping off the cliff, likely leading to their deaths, or turn back and face the hunter's shots. "It's so heartbreaking," Did they jump off the cliff, or were they killed by the hunters? I sighed sadly, eager to know the conclusion with great curiosity. Guess what happened next? The 4 deer paused on the cliff side, seemingly devising an escape plan from this predicament. The largest and strongest deer, identified as the father deer by my teacher, leaped into the air. Immediately following, a young deer jumped at a slightly higher angle, landing on the father deer's back. Using the bouncing force, the son deer successfully cleared the gap between the opposite cliffs and safely landed on the other side of the valley. Unfortunately, the father deer plummeted into the deep valley. That's so sad for the deer family, I cried, and my tears prompted Jing to continue the story, her eyes also moist. The mother deer and the daughter deer repeated this process similarly. The daughter deer successfully escaped, but the mother deer fell off the high cliff. What a tragic outcome. The hunters murdered the deer parents. I exclaimed. Jing didn't respond to my emotional comments and continued her narration. But my teacher said that in the next life cycle, the son deer and the father deer would switch roles. The father deer would become the new son deer, and the son deer would become the new father deer. So, the next time they faced danger, the former father deer would jump on the back of the son or the new father to escape. The same would happen for the mother and the daughter deer. The cycle of selfless love would repeat continuously from generation to generation. I wouldn't want them to become deer again in their next life cycle, I interjected. I want them to become hunters, and the hunters become deer next time. My words brought a smile to Jing's face, but it quickly faded as she posed a question: if we were the deer family, would Dad and Mom save us when facing the same danger? I was perplexed and slow to comprehend her meaning. Before I could respond, Jing answered her own question confidently: certainly, Dad and Mom would do what the father and mother deer did. Please, just one more story, I pleaded with Jing. No, you agreed that I would tell you only one story each day. We should stick to the rule, Jing insisted. She sensed that her repertoire of stories might run dry, worrying that she couldn't sustain daily storytelling throughout the long summer to prevent me from running away. While I listened to Jing recount the deer family's tale, Mom faced a severe political storm, enduring slander from fellow attendees in the summer political class. Despite the tumultuous events, I persisted in pestering my sister for more stories. Sister, you promised to tell me at least one good story every day. You haven't done that yet today. Jing believed her stories had captivated my attention to the point that I might have forgotten my intention to find Mom. She didn't monitor me as closely as in the first few days, making a significant mistake by losing control. Several days later, when her story database nearly dried up, Jing realized I had truly disappeared one afternoon. Frantically searching all my usual hiding spots yielded no trace of me. Terrified, she cried all the way to the relative whom Mom had entrusted to help watch over us. While Jing explained my disappearance, my recklessness led me to venture alone on my determined path to find Mom. By the time Jing noticed I was missing, I had already walked several miles. The day grew progressively darker after sunset, and complete darkness fell before I covered even 1/3 of the total distance. In that moment, the frightening tiger story Jing had warned me about echoed in my mind. She had repeatedly cautioned that I might end up in a tiger's stomach if I dared to run away alone. Now, filled with regret, I broke into a loud cry in the darkness. I miss Mom. I miss my elder sister. I sobbed. Fortunately, I didn't have to wait on the roadside for too long. After about 10 minutes, 2 adults with flashlights walked in my direction along the same road. Opting for a nighttime stroll to avoid the daytime heat, they heard the crying voice of a little boy and recognized it as the younger son of a teacher they were familiar with. "Pooh, why are you crying here, and how did you end up here?" one of them inquired. "I miss my mom. I miss my mom." I lowered the pitch of my cry upon the arrival of the 2 adults, whom I felt had saved me from the imagined tiger hiding in the darkness. Where is your mother? She is studying politics with other teachers. At the time, I had no understanding of what I was saying and simply repeated words I'd overheard at home from my parents' conversations. Now out of the woods and fueled by my strong desire to find Mom, I requested, "Uncles, can you please bring me there?" Uncle is a term Chinese kids often use to address adult male strangers as a sign of respect. The two adults were familiar with the locations where the teachers conducted their studies. Recognizing the danger of leaving me unattended in the night, they deliberated and decided to bring me with them as they were also heading to that place. This choice saved them the additional round trip of almost 10 miles to and from the school. On the day before I was brought to Mom, she had just extricated herself and our family from a political trap. Viciously accused by a colleague in the stifling political atmosphere, Mom defended herself against allegations of being a spy for America and Chiang Kai-shek, citing her siblings' overseas relations as a baseless claim. Narrowly escaping the clutches of a shapeless political tiger, she lost sleep that night. Seeing me the next day, her tense mood eased. She held me tightly, kissed my small face, and repeated, "My little one, my dear son," with tears filling her eyes. Even years later, the image of reuniting with Mom remains vivid in my mind. At that moment, she couldn't discern if her tears stemmed from the mental torment of political studies or the joy of seeing me. Perhaps both factors contributed to her mixed emotions. When she calmed down, she realized she had forgotten something crucial: how such a young child like me managed to traverse the rugged mountain road, covering all 15 miles from home. "My little dear, how did you end up here? Does your elder sister know you left home?" Yes, she knew. Fearing Mom's punishment, I dared not reveal that I had managed to escape Jing's strict control. "And two people brought me here. Who are they, and have you thanked them?" "Yes, I thanked them a lot. I even said they would be blessed and rewarded in the future for their kindness. One is Li Shirduan, and I don't know the other's name." At my innocent age, I had pronounced the name unclearly, leaving Mom momentarily confused when hearing Li Shirduan. However, she quickly realized it was Li Shirwan, who worked at the department store near the school, regularly traveling to larger markets to purchase commodities for replenishing the stock to serve the local villagers. At the time, I could easily mispronounce Wan as Duan. 8 years after the struggle meeting in which Dad was criticized, there was a cadre gathering at the same school. The participants included leaders at 3 levels of local government: district, commune, and brigade. The meeting aimed to enhance political consciousness and, with no large hotel in town, the campus was chosen as the venue. With more than 10 classrooms, it accommodated both study sessions during the day and sleeping arrangements at night. Meetings of this kind were held annually before the mid-1970s at various schools. This one marked the last of its kind before China entered the new era of reform and openness, in the late 1970s. One day, as Jing and I passed by a classroom, we overheard a speaker discussing the history of local Communist Party members' secret activities before the party came to power in 1949. We caught a mention of our dad's name, prompting us to stop outside with intense curiosity about how he would address that historical period. At that moment, the teacher who had fiercely criticized Dad 8 years ago walked by the classroom and scolded us. "How dare you, black whelps of a capitalist executioner, stay here furtively to listen? Go away." Jing retorted immediately without hesitation, "We have the right to listen to revolutionary stories. Do you think this is still the time of the Cultural Revolution? No more political persecution." The altercation between Jing and the teacher had drawn the attention of some people inside the classroom, prompting them to gaze outside and see what was happening. The teacher appeared to have lost face, but he was more afraid that an intensified clash would reflect poorly on him. Quarreling with a teenage girl and an even younger boy in public would not bring him any honor. Reluctantly, he left in a disgruntled manner. Reflecting on that unpleasant encounter many years ago, I can't emphasize enough the bravery Jing displayed. Additionally, she exhibited an unusual and premature political foresight beyond her teenage years. The conflict occurred sometime in early 1977, only a few months after the death of the Communist Party leader Mao Zedong and the collapse of the Gang of Four led by his widow, Jiang Qing. The new top leader at that time insisted on continuing Mao's policies for China. During this politically fuzzy period, when Jing refuted the teacher with, "Do you think this is still the time of the Cultural Revolution?" It was not until August 1977, when the more practical and open-minded leader Deng Xiaoping came to power, that the Cultural Revolution was officially announced to be ended. Jing impressed me not only with her bravery but also with her keen political insight. Shortly after Mao's death, she sensed the imminent significant changes in China. Unfortunately, the suffering experience of unexpectedly witnessing Dad being humiliated on the struggle meeting had serious consequences for Jing. Her intermittent headaches began shortly after, ranging from mild to severe. By the late 1980s, the pain had worsened, necessitating surgery. During the scheduled operation, I was in the final stages of my graduate study in Shanghai, focusing on preparing my thesis defense. Unaware of Jing's condition, my parents kept it a secret to avoid distracting me from my studies, hoping to inform me once the surgery was successfully completed. Regrettably, the outcome was not favorable, and Jing passed away just 3 days later. For decades since Jing's departure, I often dream of returning to the spot where we took a break during my first long hike away from home. I vividly recall catching the baby bird and releasing it under Jing's encouragement. The spot had a special name, Seven Trees, though only a single tree stood there. The origin of the name traced back to mythology where 7 goddess daughters escaped to Earth to explore the 3 gorges. While flying over the tributary region of the Yangtze River, they were captivated by the geographic wonder. The 7 fairies gracefully positioned themselves in the air, using their fingers to depict something onto the high and precipitous cliff. Legend has it that they were attempting to inscribe their names on the rocks in memory of the wonderful trip. Strangely, 7 trees grew out of the huge rocks after their departure. The strokes written by their fingers became the trunks and branches of the trees, growing rapidly regardless of environmental conditions, ultimately becoming the tallest, straightest, and boasting the largest crowns among all trees in the area. This legendary tale has been documented in local history records since the Tang dynasty, signifying that the 7 trees had stood on the cliff for over 1,000 years. These silent witnesses observed the ceaseless flow of the river below, preserving the natural beauty until the late 1950s. However, during Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward movement, aimed at industrial advancement, the majority of trees in the surrounding forest were cut down for fuel, thrown into furnaces to produce iron and steel. All but one of the 7 trees fell victim to this adversity. The surviving tree became subject to the local government's mercy, preserving the memory of the legendary historical relic. Although the site should have been renamed Single Tree to reflect the changes, the historical name, 7 Trees, continues to be used. Mao's impulsive policies proved catastrophic, destroying nature. When mountain winds pass through the branches and leaves of the last tree, the resulting sound is heard like crying or wailing, believed to be the tree mourning the loss of its 6 sisters. The passing of Jing has haunted me for years. I've never stopped pondering one thing since her departure: what would be the outcome if her surgery hadn't taken place in a local city hospital near our hometown? If she had undergone the surgery at a superior hospital in a larger city with more advanced medical facilities, would she have survived all these years? I particularly imagine if the surgery had been conducted in Shanghai, where I was studying at the time, would the result be different? Even if she were destined to leave the world before reaching 30, I could have spent some time with her in the final days of her life. Before she took her last breath, I would have reminded her of the joke she made long ago: "If you become rich and honored someday, don't forget me." I would have assured her that whether I become rich or not, she would always be on my mind.